Have you ever felt like security measures are just constantly getting in your way?
Oh, definitely.
Like they're this obstacle course designed to stop you from, actually doing your job.
It's really common frustration, yeah.
It really is. I saw this Reddit user who put it perfectly asking, is it me or has security become so intrusive you can't even get your job done?
Captures it, exactly.
So today, we're diving right into that tension.
Mm-hmm.
The whole tug of war between security and, well, usability.
Mm-hmm.
We're exploring that critical difference between feeling secure and actually being secure. And that leads us straight to this concept of security theater.
Yeah, it's a fascinating and honestly incredibly important distinction. A lot of organizations, they invest heavily in security, right?
Right.
But sometimes that investment, well, it goes into measures that maybe look good on paper or they make people feel safer without really tackling the deepest vulnerabilities.
So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack what security theater really is. Why is it everywhere?
And how our own psychology, our brains play a big part in it.
Exactly. And most importantly, how can organizations move from those kind of superficial things to genuine, effective cybersecurity?
To help us get our heads around this, we're looking at a few things. There's a real-world case study from Princeton University, a pretty revealing and sometimes funny online discussion from IT pros on Reddit.
Ah, yes. Always insightful.
Definitely. And some expert analysis on the psychology of security, plus this really crucial idea called the compliance resilience gap.
It sounds like these sources give us a good look from different angles.
Yeah, exactly. From the sort of ground level user frustrations all the way up to the high level strategic mistakes that can happen even when people mean well.
Okay. Sounds great. Now, before we unpack all of this, we really want to give a big thank you to our sponsor, www.CISOmarketplace.com. They're such an invaluable resource for connecting CISOs with cutting-edge security solutions, helping them build defenses that are truly robust and, effective.
A great resource.
Okay, so let's get into it. This term, security theater. It was coined by the security expert Bruce Schneier.
That's right.
And it refers to security measures designed more to, create an impression of safety.
Right, the feeling.
Rather than providing actual real protection. It's all about appearance, perception, over genuine effectiveness. Substance.
That's such a key distinction, and you see physical examples all the time, don't you?
Like what?
Well, think about mall security guards, maybe. Their presence, it might make you feel a bit safer. It's a general deterrent.
Sure.
But are they really equipped to stop every single sophisticated threat? Probably not. Or those random bag searches at airports?
Oh, yeah.
It's a measure, sure, but does it demonstrably make flying safer against every kind of threat? It's debatable. But it definitely makes people feel like something serious is being done.
And this isn't just about physical stuff, is it? Because I can totally relate to this feeling, and it feels like it's everywhere in the digital world, too.
Oh, absolutely. Spot on.
What are some common cybersecurity examples that kind of fall into this theater category?
Well, in the digital space, you often see it with, say, an over-reliance on just conventional firewalls as your main defense.
Okay.
Or overly complex password policies, the ones forcing changes every 6 weeks.
Those.
Yeah. Does changing it that often truly make things more secure? A lot of times it just pushes people to write them down or use predictable patterns, which, actually reduces security.
Oh, right. Counterproductive.
Totally. Or just using basic antivirus as the only defense. Or simply ticking boxes for regulatory compliance without really thinking deeper. These are classic examples. They create this illusion of safety, but don't really strengthen the actual security against the threats that are out there now.
And that brings us right back to that user frustration we started with.
Yeah.
That Reddit thread, it's just packed with people sharing their pain from this exact situation. Some of the examples are just kind of mind-boggling. Like users unable to access USB drives, blocked email attachments, even basic Office files need zipping first.
Well,
why? And get this. Needing a password, an RSA token, MS Authenticator, a text code, and key security just to log into your laptop as a non-admin user while you're in the office.
That is a lot.
It's not even getting into blocked access to normal work sites like Notion or needing 2 VPNs for remote work and you can only get your 365 email in the office. It just sounds absolutely maddening.
And what's really interesting or maybe worrying is how these super intrusive measures often backfire.
Oh,
They lead to something called shadow IT. Basically, users just trying to get their jobs done right, they actively find ways around these security roadblocks.
okay.
There was this one Reddit user, kind of funny, described running their Corpo OS in a virtual machine hooked up to their cell phone's Wi-Fi.
No way.
Just so they could get shit done, bypass corporate IT completely.
Wow, but the irony.
Exactly. The irony is this often creates much bigger risks than the original security measures we're trying to prevent. It's this vicious cycle where security tries to lock things down so tight that they inadvertently push risky behavior outside of any official oversight. New uncontrolled vulnerabilities pop up.
So we're seeing this clear disconnect, the appearance of security versus its actual effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And this leads us to something really important called the compliance resilience gap. Can you break that down for us?
Absolutely. That Vendify source we looked at really lays it out well. Compliance, think of it as externally motivated.
Okay, external.
Yeah, it's driven by regulations, avoiding fines, that sort of thing. And success is typically measured by passing audits at a specific point in time, maybe annually, maybe biannually, documenting controls.
Right. Checking
the boxes, proving you met a standard at that moment.
It's like cramming for a test versus actually knowing the material long term.
That's a great analogy because resilience, on the other hand, that's internally motivated.
Okay.
It's focused squarely on protecting the core business operations, maintaining trust. Success there isn't about passing an audit. It's about having effective detection and response capabilities. It's about minimizing the business impact when inevitably something does happen. And that needs continuous validation against real threats, not just a snapshot once a year.
And the statistics you mentioned earlier, they really paint a picture of this gap, don't they?
They're stark, yeah. Truly stark. What jumped out at you?
Well, it's just shocking that 60% of organizations hit by significant breaches were fully compliant with regulations at the time.
60% compliant.
And listen to this. The average cost of a data breach for those compliance-only places was 23% higher.
Higher cost, even though they were compliant.
Exactly. Plus, 82% of breached organizations had passed their last compliance audit within 6 months of the incident. It just screams that compliance isn't stopping attacks.
It's not enough. It gives that false sense of security. Or maybe it's just a very expensive checkbox exercise.
And these aren't just abstract numbers, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned case studies where this actually played out.
Yeah, real-world examples, like a UK financial services provider, impeccably compliant on paper, passed all their assessments.
Okay.
But they got hit by a sophisticated ransomware attack using novel techniques. Things their checklist didn't cover. It went undetected for 17 days.
17 days.
That's 10.
Because they were focused on the checklist, not resilience.
Precisely. And similarly, a healthcare organization, strict data protection compliance, everything documented, but they were breached through a previously unknown vulnerability in their supply chain.
Oof, supply chain. That's tough.
It is. And their documented incident response plan. It had never been realistically tested. So when the attack happened, the response was chaotic, which just made the impact and the cost much worse. Looked great on paper, crumbled under real pressure.
These failures go beyond just the breaches themselves, too.
Yeah.
Tying back to those Reddit comments and the sources, organizations end up wasting valuable resources on stuff that's more spectacle over substantive protection. Like installing security tools just to satisfy a regulation, but then not configuring them properly or maintaining them.
Or not training people on how to use them effectively.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The airline industry example is interesting, too. Billions lost from security changes that cause huge operational friction, focusing on appearance without maybe a proportional increase in real safety.
Indeed. And those operational problems we heard about on Reddit. Security teams accidentally causing big outages.
Yeah.
Blocking essential updates like Chrome or Linux Yum updates because of overzealous SSL inspection.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Or just making basic things like sharing files incredibly difficult. Now, it's not always, as some Redditors joked, because IT or security staff are arrogant or power-tripping.
Sometimes it might feel that way, though.
Fair enough. But often it stems from a genuinely misaligned company culture, where security's main goal is seen as just covering their asses, or preventing any possible risk, however small, rather than enabling the business to operate securely.
And that approach creates this false sense of completion, right?
Exactly. Leaves huge unaddressed risks That target breach is the classic reminder happened via an HVAC vendor. The attackers didn't hit target directly first. It shows thinking, oh, we don't have anything important here. It's just dangerous. You might be the entry point to attack someone else.
Wow. Okay, this really brings us to a deep insight from Bruce Schneier. He says security is both a mathematical reality and a psychological feeling.
Crucial point.
And as we've been seeing, those two things are often totally misaligned. You can be secure but not feel secure.
And vice versa. You can feel really secure when actually you're quite vulnerable.
So why?
Yeah.
Why are our brains so, bad at judging risk accurately?
That's $1 million question, isn't it? And Schneier digs into the why. Fundamentally, our brains evolved over millions of years to deal with immediate primitive threats.
Like a lion jumping out.
Exactly. That amygdala, the fight or flight part, often called the lizard brain, it's super fast reacting to visible danger, physical threats.
Okay.
But the newer part, the analytical neocortex that handles complex modern risks, like cyber attacks or supply chain issues or pandemics. Well, as Daniel Gilbert put it, it's still in beta testing.
Still buggy.
Kind of. It's much slower, it takes more effort, and it finds it really hard to override that immediate gut reaction from the amygdala, from the lizard brain.
So our basic survival instincts are constantly messing with our logical assessment of these modern, more abstract threats.
Pretty much.
What are some of the specific mental shortcuts, the cognitive biases that lead us down the wrong path with security?
Well, this evolutionary mismatch creates several key biases. First, there's the availability heuristic.
Okay, availability.
We tend to overestimate risks that are easy to remember, things that are vivid, recent, or really emotionally charged.
Right, like after a big, highly publicized hack.
Exactly. Companies might suddenly pour money into defending against that specific type of attack, while maybe ignoring the more boring, but statistically much more common, phishing emails that are quietly draining resources day after day.
Because the big hack is readily available in our minds.
Precisely. The media constantly reporting on spectacular events warps our perception. It leads to this risque du jour mentality, focusing way too much on whatever's currently in the headlines, regardless of the actual probability.
Okay, what else?
Then there's representativeness. This is where we think overly specific, detailed scenarios. Schneier calls them movie plot threats.
Oh, like in the movies.
Yeah. We think those are more likely than broader, more probable risks, just because they feel more like a typical threat story, even if mathematically they're way less likely.
So we might spend resources defending against, I don't know, some super complex James Bond-style cyberplot.
Right, a movie plot threat.
While a simple automated brute force attack just walks right in.
Yeah.
Because we weren't focused on that more probable, less glamorous risk.
Exactly. Then add optimism bias, the classic, it won't happen to me.
Oh yeah, I know that one.
We all do. We underestimate risks we choose to take, like driving, maybe speeding a little, and we overestimate risks in situations we can't control, like flying, even though statistically flying is much safer. In cybersecurity, this means users thinking, oh, my data won't be targeted, or I'm careful, I won't click that link.
When we know human error is a huge vulnerability.
Huge. And finally, there's mental accounting. We mentally put costs into different buckets. Saving $5 on a $15 coffee feels like a bigger deal than saving $5 on a $125 jacket. Right?
Yeah, it does feel different.
It translates to security. We have a safety or security mental account. Money spent from that account feels different, maybe more painful than money from, say, the operations account, even if it's the same amount.
So we might skimp on less visible but critical security upgrades because the cost feels higher coming out of that specific mental bucket.
It can definitely lead to underinvestment in the boring but necessary stuff.
Wow. This is such a helpful way to understand why we react to security the way we do. And Schneier's point about the trade-off, that's key.
It really is.
He says asking, is this effective, is the wrong question.
Right.
The right question is it a good trade-off? Because every security measure has costs, right? Not just money.
Exactly. Time, convenience, lost capabilities, maybe even personal liberties in some cases.
His example of wearing a bulletproof vest in a safe neighborhood.
Oh.
Yeah, it's effective against bullets, but it's obviously not a good trade-off for daily life there.
We make these trade-offs constantly, often without thinking. But our ancient brains often get the calculation wrong in today's complex world.
Okay, so given all these psychological hurdles and the clear dangers of security theater, how do we actually move towards real protection? towards resilience. You mentioned Princeton University as a good model.
Yeah, Princeton's journey is quite insightful. Think about securing a university like that is like securing a small city. You've got dorms, museums, libraries, tons of research.
Right, very diverse environment.
Extremely diverse user base, too. So they face this big challenge. How do you get people to genuinely care about security, not just be aware of it? Their awareness team had this great phrase, bridge the gap between I am aware and I care. And they decided to start low and slow.
I like that, low and slow. So what did they actually do?
Well, they didn't just buy fancy tools and walk away. They built a whole program. They implemented practical things like Proofpoint for email and web security, including a feature called Hover to Discover.
Hover to Discover. What's that?
It lets users safely preview where a link really goes before clicking, helps spot phishing attempts.
Ah, neat. Smart.
Yeah. And to fight phishing, which is huge everywhere, they set up a fishbowl website. It shows descriptions of the latest phishing emails people are reporting, tells you how to report them. It makes it visible and educational.
So it's about building awareness and providing tools together.
Exactly. It's about building this robust security awareness program from the ground up. People like their CISO, David Sherry, and the program manager, Tara Schaffler, really led this. They expanded mandatory training, offered more advanced online modules, and crucially, they reported metrics showing actual improvements in security behavior and outcomes. It wasn't just about activity, it was about results.
That commitment to culture change and measuring results seems key.
Absolutely. Their approach really shows that fostering a genuine security culture is vital. It's got to be about continuous learning, adapting as threats change, and making sure security isn't just a forgotten checklist item, but a core value protecting everyone.
So what does this mean for other organizations, maybe smaller ones, looking to build real security? What are the actionable steps they should focus on based on what we've discussed?
Okay, first step. Risk assessment and prioritization. You absolutely need to continuously identify, assess, and then prioritize the risks to your specific organization's information and systems.
Not just generic risks.
Right. Evaluate your actual vulnerabilities, the real threats you face, and then make concrete, data-driven recommendations for how to mitigate the most important ones first. You can't protect everything equally, so you have to know where your biggest dangers are.
Makes sense. Then what?
Second, implement evidence-based strategies. This really means moving beyond just generic compliance checklists. Use established frameworks like ISO 27001 or NIST, but use them as guides to make decisions tailored to your organization's unique needs and vulnerabilities.
So don't just copy what another company does or what's easiest to tick off a list.
Exactly. Adapt the best practices to your context.
Okay, and the third piece.
This is maybe the most important. Foster a culture of genuine security. This is where the rubber meets the road. Your cybersecurity training, it has to be engaging.
Not boring PowerPoints.
Please, no. Think videos, interactive modules, quizzes, maybe even phishing simulations. It needs to be updated regularly to cover the latest threats. And you need follow-up testing to see if people actually learned anything and if behavior is changing.
So it's about integrating security into the company's core values, making it feel like everyone's job.
Precisely, not just a once-a-year checkbox.
You know, it's also worth revisiting that Schneier idea you mentioned, the third way.
Ah, yes, integrating the feeling and the reality.
Right. While we've been pretty critical of security theater, Schneier does suggest that sometimes carefully applied theater can be useful.
If it serves a purpose.
Yeah, if it helps align people's feeling of security with the actual reality of security. His example was tamper-proof packaging on medicines after those Tylenol poisonings years ago.
Right, a classic case.
It didn't stop every possible poisoning method, obviously, but it significantly reduced the public's fear, bringing their perception of risk, which had become huge, back in line with the actual, very minimal risk. And that alignment made it a worthwhile change, a good trade-off.
That's a perfect illustration. The goal isn't necessarily to eliminate all theater, but to make sure any theater you do use genuinely supports real security goals and helps manage perception constructively.
So at the end of the day,
the goal is striking that crucial balance where strong security actually enables people to do their work, enables business operations rather than hindering them.
It requires that constant fine-tuning, doesn't it? Adjusting tools, policies based on real risks and real user experience to get to true resilience, not just performative compliance.
Exactly. It's about smart, adaptive security that works with people, not against them.
As we've explored today, that whole journey from security theater to genuinely robust, effective cybersecurity, well, it needs insightful leadership and the right tools. And that's why we're proud to have www.CISOmarketplace.com as our sponsor again. They are a key partner in helping CISOs find those genuine security solutions that truly make a difference in building resilient organizations.
Definitely a valuable connection point.
So to wrap up this deep dive, the big takeaway is that security is just inherently complex, isn't it?
It really is.
And our human tendency, our wiring, to prioritize the feeling of safety over the reality of it creates some significant vulnerabilities. We're just not naturally equipped to perceive risk perfectly in our modern interconnected world.
Yeah, those biases are powerful, but by understanding them and by implementing thoughtful, evidence-based strategies, organizations really can move beyond just that checkbox security.
Right. Move towards achieving a more resilient, genuinely secure posture.
It's about bridging that gap we talked about between compliance and true resilience, making security an enabler, something that helps, not just an obstacle to overcome.
Okay, before we go, here's a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe mull over. Considering how our brains are wired to perceive risk, where might you be inadvertently applying some form of security theater, maybe in your own digital life or perhaps within your organization, without even realizing it?
That's a good question to ask.
What's maybe one specific area where you could shift focus from just feeling secure to taking steps to truly be secure? We really encourage you to critically examine your own security practices and maybe advocate where you can for real data-driven resilience over just ticking boxes.
This has been The Deep Dive. Thanks so much for joining us on this exploration of security from the theater to the real world.